Am I the only one in the media concerned about the treatment of Oliver Schulz, the returned SAS soldier with 250 missions in 2 years, 3 deployments to Afghanistan in under 2 years, now charged with a war crime, murder? Since he was arrested last week, this fine Australian, no risk to anybody, he's been in jail, awaiting bail. His application was approved today. The nation should be filled with shame that such a man can be so appallingly treated. Yet we're expecting our young men and women to line up and go to war when they're treated like this when they come home. Of course, all of this is a consequence of a program by the professional haters, the ABC and Four Corners, allegedly showing Oliver Schulz shooting an Afghan in a wheat field. In other words, as I have said, you go to war, it's kill or be killed, but you now got to be careful who you shoot and why. And as I said last week, if you're not shot on the battlefield, they will metaphorically shoot you when you come home. As I've also said, because of the danger of the work they do, and because they're some of the finest soldiers sent to the most dangerous environments, the finest soldiers to ever leave our shores, they've historically been protected by anonymity. Why has this man been named, putting his family at risk? Ever since the release of this Brereton report, these men have been treated like rubbish, thrown out, cast aside, stood down, sacked without a single whiff of justice being available to them. Well, at least Oliver Schulz will be able to walk through a court of law. I was interested in a series of comments from people who heard what I had to say last week. I mentioned last week, you might recall, the Yamashita standard, where General Yamashita was hanged on February 23, 1946, for crimes committed by his Japanese forces in defence of the Philippines. Yamashita was not personally accused of committing any crime, but he was court-martialed and hanged for, quote, failing in his duty as commander of the Japanese forces, unquote. And as I said before, the US Supreme Court upheld the decision that he be put to death because, quote, a commander can be held accountable for crimes committed by his troops, even if he did not order them, did not know about them, or didn't have the means to stop them, unquote. It's called the Yamashita Standard, adopted by the Geneva Convention, and we are a signatory to the Geneva Convention. So, charge Oliver Schulz, but who were the commanding officers when Oliver Schulz was on duty in Afghanistan? The current chief of the Defence Force is a fellow by the name of Angus Campbell. He's never fired a weapon in anger, but he was one commander of the troops who were sent to Afghanistan. Why then is he not charged under the Yamashita Standard? Since the Supreme Court decision in 1946 in America, the United States Congress and federal courts throughout the country have relied on the Yamashita Standard. Many important human rights cases cite directly the US Supreme Court decision and the Yamashita Standard. And indeed, the United States Senate Committee has stated, quote, under international law, responsibility for torture, summary execution, or disappearance extends beyond the person or persons who actually committed those acts. Anyone with higher authority who authorised, tolerated, or knowingly ignored those acts is liable for them. So how does this come about? One of my correspondents has pointed out that the reason the Defence Force is so keen to investigate and prosecute our soldiers is because our political class have put those soldiers in grave jeopardy by signing up to what is known as the Rome Statute that establishes the International Criminal Court. Barack Obama refused, as US President, to be part of that process. Donald Trump not only refused to go with it, but put sanctions on International Criminal Court staff who sought to investigate US troops. Indeed, Trump threatened to prosecute ICC staff who set foot in America. As one correspondent said, quote, by signing up to the Rome Statute, we ensure that our soldiers have constantly to second-guess themselves in desperate battlefield situations. He said, meanwhile, our enemies, the people from whom our soldiers are protecting us, are utterly unconstrained in how they act against our troops.